The offseason is always one of the most exciting times of every year for the NBA because it's when the entire league gets shaken up. Whether it's from players signing with new teams in free agency, star players getting traded, or teams getting the chance to restructure themselves for a chance at an NBA championship. Some teams take advantage of these opportunities and other teams don't, and instead their team either stays the exact same or takes a lot of steps back. We have 7 teams that have come out of this offseason as winners and 3 teams that should definitely be considered losers. We're going to start with the losers first so we can end on a positive note with the winners. And I should mention there's a lot of teams that got better through the draft this year, but for this video we're going to be looking at everything not including the draft. So with that being said, let's start with the losers. Loser number 1, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. I get that in no way was it really the Pelicans' fault that DeMarcus Cousins and Rajon Rondo left to go to teams that they felt they had a better chance at winning a championship with, but what it boils down to is that this offseason, the Pelicans replaced Cousins and Rondo with Elfrid Payton and Julius Randle. Sadly, there's no chance that they're going to be anywhere near as good as they were last year, because when Cousins was healthy, him and AD were dominant last season, and in the playoffs, Rondo pretty much controlled the entire pace of their offense. So for this season, Anthony Davis has played most of his career with a big man that could step out and shoot from mid-range or the 3, so it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in with Julius Randle, who isn't the most efficient at either of those. And as for Elfrid Payton replacing Rondo, well, they've got some work to do. Loser number 2. The Miami Heat. The Heat had one of the worst off seasons because they really did nothing. They had no draft picks, they signed no free agents, made no trades, and waived no players, which is going to give them the exact same roster as last season that was only enough to win them 1 game in the playoffs. We all expected at least a trade revolving around Hassan Whiteside, but hopefully we'll see that later in the season. Loser number 3, the Charlotte Hornets. I really don't see what the Hornets were trying to do this offseason. They did sign Tony Parker, who I think can be a great leader in the locker room for that team, which was a solid move, but then they trade Dwight Howard to the Nets in what looks like a move to get rid of his $23 million contract. But then right after that, they go and trade for Bismack Biyombo, who's a worse center and is going to be making $17 million this season. A lot of people were expecting the Hornets to make big changes, whether it was starting to rebuild or even trade Kemba Walker for a different star player, but nothing like that happened. So it looks like they're still going to try to be a winning team with basically the same roster that they've tried that with for years. With a team made up of Kemba Walker, Cody Zeller, Nicholas Batum that's making $24 million a year, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and now Tony Parker and Biyombo, I'm pretty sure they're still not going to be a winning team. They got way too many guys on their team that are overpaid and too many guys that haven't lived up to their potential. That Hornets team last year with Dwight Howard was probably the best team they've had in the Kemba Walker era, and after seeing how that turned out and the fact that they still didn't make any drastic changes this offseason makes me think that they're just not gonna. But hopefully I'm wrong and they do something over this season, because the Hornets and Michael Jordan can't possibly think that this team is just gonna one day randomly develop into a playoff caliber team. Alright, now on to the winners. First with the Golden State Warriors. Next. Whoa. I know I shouldn't even waste my time on talking about the team of snakes, but we'll make it quick. The Warriors did so well this offseason, again, that they ruined the NBA. Because, as we all know, they now have the biggest super team in NBA history, after signing DeMarcus Cousins to a 1-year, $5 million deal. But it didn't go down with him taking a huge pay cut for a chance at an NBA championship like a lot of people thought, because it came out that due to his Achilles tear and his bad attitude at times, he actually had 0 contract offers in free agency. So he reached out to the Warriors to see what they could offer him. But no matter how it went down, they were winners this offseason and at the same time ruined the NBA. Winner number 2, the Houston Rockets. Usually, anytime you'd replace Trevor Ariza with Carmelo Anthony, that'd make your offseason a win. But for the Houston Rockets, it could be a different story, because last season the Rockets were basically made up of Chris Paul and James Harden, and then the rest of the roster was great two-way players like Eric Gordon, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, and Clint Capella. They did only lose Ariza, but we saw how Melo worked out with 2 other stars last season, and the fact that this Rockets team might not work out with 3 stars in the starting lineup, with 2 of them needing the ball in their hand to score, means that we'll have to wait and see if they really were winners or losers this offseason. But for now, I'll lead towards them being winners. And they did sign a 33-year-old Chris Paul to a max deal that's gonna land him about $40 million a year. Some people say it was too much money, but if he was healthy, there's a good chance they would have beat the Warriors in Game 7 last year, and I'm sure that if they didn't offer him that deal, then another team would have. So I think that was a good move by them. But definitely comment your thoughts on this one if you think the Rockets are going to be better or worse with Carmelo Anthony. Number 3, the Los Angeles Lakers. Alright, let's just get this one out of the way because we all know what's coming. Of course the Lakers are winners this offseason because they brought in LeBron James, but they've also handled everything else extremely well. Sure, they didn't bring in Paul George, DeMarcus Cousins, or Kawhi Leonard to pair up with LeBron, but that means that they got to keep Lonzo, Kuzma, and Ingram. And there's still a good chance that Kawhi ends up in LA next season anyways, so if that does happen, it was a great move by them to not give up too much just to bring him in a season early. And besides attracting stars, LA's done a good job of attracting quality role players so far, with Caldwell Pope, Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo, Michael Beasley, and JaVale McGee. Sure, they're not the greatest role players, but the Lakers were smart enough to sign all these guys on 1-year deals. So they're still gonna have all the money they'll need to sign guys next offseason, and if any one of these role players show out for them this season, they can earn themselves a bigger contract for next year. Number 4, the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder didn't do a tremendous job this offseason adding depth to their team, which they desperately needed, but they did make some solid moves towards the future. They re-signed Paul George for 4 years, who looked like he definitely could have gone to the Lakers, and they not only traded Carmelo Anthony, who didn't fit on the team, and was going to cost the Thunder $100 million, but they got Dennis Schroeder in return for it. So now they have a solid backup to play behind Westbrook. And the other move that stands out to me is that they signed Nerlens Noel to the veterans minimum to be a backup behind Steven Adams. Noel hasn't had much luck so far in his NBA career, but his rebounding and shot blocking can be just what OKC needs out of him as a backup. And if he does good enough, he's got the chance to put his career back on track. So overall, the Thunder couldn't have realistically done too much better this offseason. I still don't think they're going to make it deep into the playoffs, but they have put themselves on a nice track for the future, and if they keep slowly adding good role players, in the next couple years, they may end up with a team that can do work in the playoffs. Number 5, the Toronto Raptors. On paper, it might look like the Raptors lost this trade for giving away too much for Kawhi Leonard, and they might have lost the respect of DeMar DeRozan and a lot of other NBA players, but I think they still came out a better team. Because they are definitely gambling right now with Kawhi, and chances are he's probably not going to be a Raptor next season, but even then it's okay, because let's be honest, that Raptors team centered around DeRozan and Lowry was a great playoff team, but we're probably never going to be a championship team, especially with their performances in the playoffs. So it was about time that they broke up their team, and now that they finally have, they're taking a safe gamble, because if they play great next season and Kawhi ends up staying, probably not, then they're going to have a solid team with a new dynamic going forward. And even if he leaves, then they can trade Kyle Lowry and start their rebuild. Number 6, the Washington Wizards. In April of this year, John Wall said this about the Wizards: "We need to add some pieces to the team. We need athletic big men and scoring off the bench." And the Wizards listened, and that's exactly what they did. They only lost Marcin Gortat and Mike Scott, but in return they landed guys like Jeff Green, Dwight Howard, and Austin Rivers. And I think teaming up Wall and Beal with a big man like Dwight Howard that can finish around the rim and block shots can change the entire dynamic of their team. So that, combined with the fact that they added Rivers and Jeff Green off the bench, looks like it's given new hope to Washington this year. They still may not be a championship level team at this point, but in one offseason, they made their team and its future look a lot better than it did last year. Number 7, the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs were in a situation where most teams would have had to just give their superstar player away, but they got a lot more than anyone expected when they gave up Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green for DeMar DeRozan and a 2019 first round pick. And this was probably the best deal they could have got, because right now they're not looking to rebuild with a guy like Brandon Ingram. They still have LaMarcus Aldridge, Pau Gasol, Rudy Gay, and that they still want to win with right now. They did lose Tony Parker, but with Dejounte Murray starting and adding DeRozan and a guy like Marco Bellinelli, they're in a much better spot than people thought they'd be after this offseason. And to be honest, the Spurs are probably a perfect fit for DeRozan, because since they play more as a team than anyone else in the league, the pressure's going to be off him to perform in the playoffs every night. He's going to be in a system that won't rely on him as heavily, but will still give him the same opportunities to perform at a high level every night. And he's going to be surrounded by a lot better teammates than he was in Toronto. So definitely make sure you guys comment your thoughts on this list, and anyone I might have missed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next video.